Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Artash Nath, and I'm a grade 11 student from Toronto, Canada. And I'm very excited today to be speaking at the World Forum for Acoustic Ecology Conference 2023. And today I'm going to be sharing a bit about my research on underwater noise, specifically underwater noise created by human activity during the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's get right into it. As most of us know, the ocean soundscape is very loud and noisy because as light can penetrate below 200 meters, noise becomes the most interesting and important factor to look at when looking at underwater mammals. So underwater, we have three main types of ocean noise. First, we have geophony, and these are the natural sounds of the earth, and this can come from rain, wind, and seismic activity, and other kind of natural sounds that penetrate to the ocean. Second, we have biophony, and these are the sounds created by marine mammals, like whales, dolphins, snapping shrimp, fish, and even the bubbling of aquatic plants. And finally, we have anthrophony. Anthrophony is the artificially induced sound from shipping activity, offshore exploration, military activity, and in the future, even possibly deep sea mining on underwater ocean noise levels. So anthrophony is the category which I was interested in for my research. The issue is that as the world becomes more globalized and as global trade increases, we're going to have more shipping activity, as over 80% of global trade by mass is conducted via shipping routes. In fact, in the past 20 years, the amount of cargo transported by ships across the ocean has nearly doubled. Unfortunately, these ships create underwater ocean noise via the propellers and their machinery in low frequencies, which overlaps with the sounds that marine mammals use for communication, navigation, finding prey, and mating. The increase in ocean noise that's being caused by the increase in shipping is leading to an increase in whale ship collisions. So to take a bit of a deeper look into how these ocean noises interlap, this is a Wenz curve, which is a study that's been aggregated into kind of all of the different sources of underwater sound, their frequencies, and their power. So between 0 to 10 hertz, noise from seismic background and natural sources is the most. Then between 10 to 100 hertz, the sound from shipping and ferry activity and so on is the most. And finally, above 100 hertz, wind contributes the most to underwater noise levels. And you can see there's a bit of an overlap between wind and shipping at the higher frequencies. The problem with measuring underwater noise from ships is that it's very hard to establish a baseline. Every year, shipping levels rise. So being able to grasp, how much or getting like kind of a unit base of how much ocean noise is there and what is the impact of shipping traffic and ocean noise is very difficult. And this is where we entered the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic was a global tragedy and led to loss of lives, loss of livelihoods, for example, myself, I went into virtual school for almost 2 years. So it was a catastrophe, but it was also a learning opportunity. The COVID-19 lockdown meant shipping routes across the world were slowed down, starting with the dip between China and North America, followed by China and Europe with the North Americas. So as shipping routes decreased and shipping came to a slowdown, I wanted to use this opportunity to establish a baseline of ocean noise levels during the COVID-19 pandemic. This would allow me to improve and create recommendations for better ocean noise strategies to reduce ocean noise and protect marine mammals in the future. The first step of my research was finding a network of hydrophones I could use to measure ocean noise across the globe. So I had quite a few criteria for choosing these hydrophones. First of all, it should represent all the oceanic regions. Since the lockdown affected the entire world and ocean noise is the global issue, I wanted to be able to capture a global perspective on ocean noise in the world. Second, these hydrophones should be located close to anthropogenic activity, whether that's from tourism ships, from commercial shipping, ferries, or other human activity. Third, they should be operational before, during, and perhaps even after the lockdown period, so I could get a good idea of how sound levels changed during the pandemic. And finally, these hydrophone data should be open source and available to the public, since open source data and open source algorithms was the foundation of my research. So I ended up getting a total of 7 hydrophones located in the Pacific, Atlantic, Mediterranean Sea, South Pacific Ocean, and even one in the Arctic Ocean. And these came from data sources like MBARI, NOAA, Ocean Networks Canada in Canada, OPSI, and Ocean Acoustics. So it was very useful to get in contact with these organizations to obtain the hydrophone data that I could use in my research. Since hydrophone data, especially hydrophone data that spans several years, is extremely difficult to get, since maintaining hydrophones takes a lot of money, equipment, and expertise. So once I'd obtained the raw hydrophone data from these hydrophones, I processed them and resampled them at 2 kilohertz. So I would be able to capture underwater noise up to the 1 kilohertz levels as per the Nyquist rule. Second, I split my data into 1-minute segments so I could calculate power spectral densities over a long period. Finally, or number 3, I applied fast Fourier transformations to each 1-minute segment of data so I could obtain the long-term spectral averages, which would show me the power of different frequencies of sound underwater over time. Number 4, eliminating the effect of wind on my data. Since in my research, I only wanted to extract the underwater noise created by anthropogenic regions, I had to find a way to remove the effect that wind had on these noise levels. So for this, I did 2 things. First, in the comparison of noise levels from one year to another, I only compared each month with the previous month. For example, March of 2020 with March of 2019 and March of 2018, to eliminate any seasonal trends that happen across the year in terms of underwater noise and wind levels. And second, and most importantly, I got buoy data of wind speed for hourly for each station. And I was also discard the data for days or hours in which the wind speed was above a certain level. Finally, I extracted the means, medians, and quartiles of underwater noise levels at the 63 Hertz, 125 Hertz, and 1 kilohertz quartiles, and compared them across different years. To do all my analysis, I coded all my algorithms in Python and used several different libraries as shown below. And at the end, I even made a web app, which I'll show at the end of the presentation. So my results were pretty interesting. So first, I compared the wind levels and underwater noise just to make sure my methodology of removing underwater noise caused by wind was sound. So on the top, you can see a row of scatter plots with the wind speed versus the sound levels at different frequencies. So you can see on the left for 63 Hertz and for 125 Hertz, the effect that wind has on underwater noise is minimal, as the correlation is very weak. But as we get to higher frequencies, the correlation between wind speed and underwater noise gets higher, which means in that case, extracting or removing the effect of wind would be much more important for the study. You can also see the average spectral density plots for days on different Beaufort scales. So Beaufort scale is an empirical measure of wind conditions. So you can see below 100 Hertz, the difference between the spectra is very minimal. Only Beaufort scale 5 really stands out from the rest. So I eliminated all the days in my data with a Beaufort scale above 5. So the resulting changes I would be seeing would be because of anthropogenic activity. So here are the plots of underwater noise decreases at all the sites after I cleaned my data. You can see that underwater noise levels decreased at every single station in my study. The biggest decrease was seen at Georgia Strait of almost 7 decibels. Similar decreases were seen at the Rangitoto Channel in the South Pacific Ocean and across the other stations in my study. I also calculated the quartile levels, specifically the 25% exceedance levels across all my sites. So 25% exceedance levels tells you kind of how the louder noises or the top 25% loudest noises changed during the time period. And I was able to measure an average 5.5 decibel dip in underwater noise in the 25% exceedance levels, which was slightly higher than the 4.5 decibel average I had seen in median underwater noise levels. This showed that the decrease in underwater noise during the pandemic was driven via louder noises, specifically ones that were probably associated with ships. I also got satellite-based automated identification system data, which tracks the position of ships, and was able to find that the sharpest decreases in shipping traffic measured by AIS measured with the sharpest decreases in underwater ocean noise found by my model and my study. Also, the areas in which both commercial shipping and ferry traffic and recreational shipping happened experienced a sharper decrease in underwater noise than places that perhaps only had one source of underwater noise. Another thing I wanted to do is kind of visually see how the noise from ships and the noise from mammals interlap or overlap within noise spectrum. So I'm going to play a short video. I'm not sure if I need to share sound in it as well. Second, share sound. There we go. So in this short video, first you'll hear the loud and jarring noise from shipping traffic. And in the second part of the video, you'll hear the whistles and clicks from dolphins. So that short sound sample was taken from the dataset I used from the Stellwagen bank. So you could clearly hear the whistles and clicks of dolphins, as well as the loud movement of ships at the beginning. On the top table, you can also see I've put in red the whale vocalization noises on the bottom, as well as the shipping noise. So you can see the very clear overlap between shipping noise and the whale vocalization, which kind of reinforces the importance behind the project. So to conclude, my model was successful at measuring the decrease in underwater noise across the sites in my study. This table shows a temporal kind of idea of when the sounds decreased at each of the locations. So you can see that the first decrease was seen in January and February in the Pacific Ocean with Georgia Strait and Monterey Bay. And this is because the initial decrease in underwater noise, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, would have been caused by the decrease in shipping traffic between China and North America, which does pass by the Pacific. Second, the decrease was seen in the Atlantic and the Mediterranean Sea, which encompasses the shipping traffic between Europe, China, and the States and Canada. And finally, the last decrease in underwater noise was seen in Glacier Bay and Cambridge Bay. These sites are much more touristic and are home to a lot of cruise traffic in the summer months, which means the decrease in underwater noise was indeed only seen in around June, July, and August. So this whole study shows that small reductions in shipping traffic can be an effective strategy to reduce underwater noise and help reverse the decline in the marine mammal population. Even in small steps like moving shipping lanes away from breeding grounds during certain months, or having a moratoria on new shipping lanes in the Arctic as sea ice melts and opens more routes, could be effective to reduce underwater noise. I've created an app, monitormyocean.com, which was endorsed as a UN Ocean Decade activity in 2021. And my app allows users anywhere to look at underwater noise trends in their locations for all 3 frequency bands of my study. My code is completely open source, and the code is available online, so that because I would like to continue pushing the monitoring of ocean noise across different regions across the globe, including both students and researchers alike. Last year, I also had the opportunity to attend the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon. At the end, the Lisbon Declaration had quite a few clauses, one that called for the prevention, reduction, and control of marine pollution. And one of the sources of marine pollution that was included in the mandate was anthropogenic ocean noise. In addition, the declaration also calls for the strengthening of scientific observation and data collection efforts, which also aligns very clearly with my study. Some more recent conferences that I'm sure you all know about, COP27 and COP15, Sharm el-Sheikh and Montreal, and these also had a higher focus on oceans than usual. For example, the Sharm el-Sheikh one had an ocean pavilion for the first time, and the 2022 COP15 also had the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, which also aims at reducing and improving the state of biodiversity loss by 2050. So all these different conferences align with the research that I'm trying to continue. And in the following years, I'll be continuing my research to encompass more parts and to continue monitoring ocean noise across the globe. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.